Kia ora. Yep, g'day. Big it up, big it up, big it up, and welcome to another episode of the Nyika, a variety show coming at you on a glorious Aotearoa Monday. And we have a nice variety on the variety show of Kiwi sporting topics, fresh off the weekend, bit of a obscure Kiwi sporting weekend, I'd say that. Not a jam-packed, swashbuckling weekend of Kiwi sport, but more of the obscure, underground, funky doodah variety, and that's what we are here for. Prior to this, we recorded a big old Black Caps T20 World Cup discussion for our patrons. So if you are a patron, a member of the Patreon whānau for the Nyika supporting us, thank you very much. Big it up to yourself. And also, go have a little listen to our Black Caps T20 World Cup kōrero on the Patreon feed. And if you do like what the Nyika is doing, if you do enjoy reading about Kiwi sports at the niche-case.com, and if you do like listening about Kiwi sports from the Nyika podcast stuff, support us straight up the guts on Patreon. It is the best way to support us. You get the karma boost, you get the good vibes, supporting our mission, and also get extra podcast video content as well. So go on over to patreon.com/Niche-Case, EL Niche-Case. And we also serve up extra content on our Monday and Friday email banger. Sign up to that at the nichecase.substack.com. Whack in your email address, and then you get all the Nyika content straight to your email on a Monday and Friday evening, as well as extra little yarns. There's plenty of extra content on the Patreon and on our email newsletter. And of course, we're always writing about Kiwi sports at the niche-case.com. We start our show with a bit of mindfulness just to set the vibe, burn a bit of sage in the air, refresh the vibe. Wildcard, what is in your chalice of mindfulness today?
Chalice, I love that. I'm dipping into one of my favorites here with Mr. Marcus Aurelius and his book that disappears in the green screen, Meditations. And this is, I always like how the stoical dudes think about stuff or thoughts about stuff. I think people have a bad rep on them sometimes because the word stoic is often used in when people say that, they often mean like someone's like repressing their emotions. Whereas I think when you actually like read Aurelius and stuff like that, and Seneca and the types, it's a lot more about kind of like that Zen focus of not overreacting to your emotions. Like don't not feel them, but just like accept them, acknowledge them, move on, sort of thing. And this one, I thought this was quite a nice short and sharp one in light of shall we say, current social issues. I think it's interesting to check out the old page 92 here. Marcus Aurelius quote, "What injures the hive injures the bee."
What injures the hive injures the hive injures the bee. It's a shout out to bees.
Definitely shout out to bees.
They do a lot of the hard mahi in the natural sphere as well. So shout out to the bees. And there's also a common theme here: the connection between humans, the connection between all of our beings and entities in the world. If you injure one of the hive, if you injure the hive, you injure the bee. So we're all connected. So you're hurting yourself, you're hurting someone else. You're hurting someone else, you're hurting the rest of us as well. So, but I come away with that with just immense gratitude for the bee. Like, the bee is an amazing creature, and just like to take a moment in honor of bees around the world, especially in Aotearoa, like producing some fine honey as well. Like, the bees are fucking awesome.
The bees definitely do more than their fair share. They, and also need to be protected a little bit better. But then also in like a metaphorical sense, very easy to see that as like good. What injures the hive injures the bee. It's also like what injures society injures the individual. I just like leave people can draw their own conclusions as to what I might be speaking of there. But there's a lot of when it comes to people saying I'm making personal decisions and whatever, and it's not such a personal decision. It affects society in a negative way. It becomes like you have a responsibility if your personal decisions impact society, like wider society, and that is something that everyone probably is dealing with at various times right now. And food for thought is that is suddenly such a personal decision when it becomes a selfish personal decision. There's maybe other things that need to be considered there, but I don't want to go too deep on that on that tangent lest I tip my hand.
Shout out to Bees as well.
Shout out to Bees for sure, though.
Radio, let's kick our show off with our 1332 Radio Sport hot takes, which are never hot. Always a bit of a chilly vibe. Chilly old chili bins full of hot takes, Wildcard. What have you got steaming up in that chili bin of hot takes?
Steamy chili bin tells me that Kiwi boxing, particularly Kiwi upper, like sort of not entirely heavyweight, because one of these fellas is probably cruiser. Kiwi boxing goes a lot deeper than just Joseph Parker right now. He may be in the news plenty at the moment as he chills with Tyson Fury and gets ready for his own camp now that Fury's assistant trainer Andy Lee is free to get Parker on his journey towards Parker versus Chisora rematch number 2 in December. That's all going on in what do you call it? I think they're in Morecambe is where their gym is, and the fight's in Manchester. That's all going on, but he's also going to be joined by none other than David Nyika, who has put on the undercard of Parker versus Farr. It was his professional debut. The fight lasted about like 20 seconds or something like that, but still. And then he went off, won an Olympic bronze medal. Now he's back and is actually linking up with Parker again, having been his main sparring partner for the Junior Far fight. He's now linking up with the Parker camp again, and a deal that'll see him, while he hasn't like signed a promotional deal or anything going on here, or latched on as an official thing with Parker's trainer or anything like that. For this one fight, he is going to be on the undercard of Parker Chisora 2, and he is also going to be working with the Parker camp again, and nice and close. And he sounds like he's pretty excited about dealing with Mr. Andy Lee. So that's cool. And then there's another Parker versus Far undercard who's also been doing some pretty impressive things recently. Hemi Ahio, Hemi the Heat Ahio. He knocked out Julius Lloyd Long that night back in, when was that, like February or whatever it was, on the Parker Far undercard. Knocked out Julius Lloyd Long. Pretty impressive performance there, although a weird one, because he did get knocked down, I think, in the 4th, and it was a strange one because he's fighting a guy who was over a foot taller than him, even though they're both heavyweights. So strange fight. But over the weekend, he's had his first fight since then against a guy called Muhammad Ali Bayat Farid. This was in the UAE as the main event, in fact, on a Amir Khan produced card, which seemed to also include a lot of crypto traders, and they had auctions for like NFTs and stuff going on at the same time. So it was a bit of a strange event on the whole, but Hemi Ahio knocked this fella down in the first round and then knocked him out in the second round. Really convincing performance. Like quick hands, showing a bit of that power. He looked real good, and he with that becomes the first ever WC Middle Eastern heavyweight champion. There's the new belt that has been sort of pioneered by Amir Khan, the former British champ, Pakistani origin, of course. He's pioneered this. Hemi Ahio is the first guy who's ever won it. It's a minor title, but as far as things go, even a minor title, having a bout will help him for sure when it comes to trying to get further fights down the line. He's 17-0 now, 13 knockouts as a professional. And I also noticed Mr. Lou DiBella getting in amongst the congratulations, which suggests that Junior Far's city kickboxing teammate is now also perhaps Junior Far's promotional teammate as well. So there we go. Kiwi boxing goes a lot deeper than just Joseph Parker at the moment.
And big it up city kickboxing. Plenty of
Absolutely.
UFC fighters, Dan Hooker's fights coming up. They've got their whole team basically preparing for upcoming fights. And what do you know? You got Junior Far, who's pretty good at boxing. Hemi Ahio, pretty good at boxing, under the tutelage of Doug Viney. With big respect to Eugene Behrman as the UFC or MMA, main MMA coach at City Kickboxing. Doug Viney's doing a fantastic job with the boxing department at CKB as well. My sizzling take here, I'm in love with the southern region of Aotearoa's rugby league situation right now. Last week, we had Southland Rams going pretty hard against Canterbury, but falling short. And that came at the same time as I was watching the Southland Stags play in the NPC. Shit got a whole lot better. Yesterday, Sunday afternoon, the Otago Whalers. Shout out to Wales. Like, don't want to be killing too many whales. Like, just got to say that before we move into the Otago Whalers. But
so is it whalers as in like WH whales, as in like the big sea mammals, or is it whalers like Bob Marley and the Whalers?
No, definitely the big sea animal variety. Right. So shout out to the Otago Whalers, and also shout out to Wales, the creatures as well, because they're pretty amazing deep in the oceans. The Otago Whalers defeated Canterbury in rugby league, which hasn't been done since 1929. And the last time Otago played Canterbury, like, apparently there were a lot of like second string Canterbury teams who played Otago, and there seems to be a lot of innuendo about Otago playing, you know, B teams and stuff like that. So the last time Otago played a full strength Canterbury team was 1971. So, and they lost that game 84-5. From that moment, Otago Rugby League has basically been shat on, because like, nah, we're Canterbury, we're too good for you, we can't play you, so we'll just send you our B team, and we'll just send you the, the battlers. Well, Otago bounced back. First win since 1929, first game against Canterbury, proper Canterbury team since 1971, and like watching some of the Otago Whalers players, like, whew, some big lads, big wingers, sharp little hooker as well. And they seem to have a good thing going down there. Like this, post-match interview afterwards and just catching the vibe of what they were doing. They seem to be building something with Otago Rugby League. And to me, that is in tune and alignment with New Zealand Rugby League and the direction that is heading. So big it up to Otago Rugby League for what they're doing down deep in the south. Big it up to the deep south for their sporting escapades. Big it up to Statistics Wildcard, because it is time for Vitamin Statistics. You are going to break down the football Ferns squad for some massive, ginormous games against Canada.
Yeah, I'm just digesting that hot take first. So there's some amazing Kiwi sport and history stuff there. It reminds me actually of very early days of the Black Caps, where they would play against like Australia once, and then Australia would send like a second team, absolutely demolish the Black Caps in like, I don't know, 1930s, early 1940s or something. And then they would just like, we're not playing you guys again in a proper test match for 25 years or something like that, because you guys suck and we're too you're not worthy of us. That's kind of how it went for the Black Caps once upon a time, and now they're world test champions. So it all comes around eventually. My vitamin stats is on this football Fern squad that's been named, which is full of uncapped players, full of inexperienced players, and pretty interesting because of that. It was one of those situations, like same as the All Whites, they just weren't able to pick players from Australia or New Zealand right now because of the quarantine scenarios, which meant no A-League women's players, no Kiwi-based like local, National League players or anything like that. For the All Whites, that wasn't such a problem because there's such an abundance of pros. For the football Ferns, there's definitely an abundance of pros relative to where they've been in the past. But it's like the top tier of players are all overseas. There's not necessarily that like next tier of players who aren't really playing international football yet, who can step up. So what that meant was that they had to dip into a lot of players who were still going to university in America and things like that. Nyika Clover's first tour with the football Ferns is definitely going to be a bit of a funky one. She's named a 22-player squad that has 6 uncapped players. Half the group, so 11 out of 22 players, have 7 or fewer, or 6 or fewer caps, so less than 7 caps. There are 10 current university students. Slight asterisk on that, being that 2 of them were in the Olympic squad anyway. Daisy Cleverly is a grad student, so she's at one of the places. So she's been in and around the football ferns for a wee while now, and she's not like this is her like 5th year of university or something like that, 4th or 5th. And Gabby Rennie was the other one who went to the Olympics and scored on debut against Australia off the bench. So that was cool. Gabby Rennie is also one of the 4 players from the 2018 under-17 squad who were in this group as well, along with, let's see if I can figure it out off the top of my head, Anna Leet, obviously, who's played a few times already for the Ferns. And who else was there? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look at the things. But Macy Frey, no, not like I'm getting confused with my football thing. I tried to go off script there. But anyway, definitely a mixed bag, because you've also got like Centurions with Ellie Riley, Rhea Percival's there, Rosie White's there, Betsy Hassett there. So like the strange mix, we've got a bunch of players who are extremely experienced, which is what we're used to seeing with the Football Ferns squad, but also a bunch of players who just have no experience whatsoever with this. So that's a little bit, a little bit different, a little bit of a glimpse into the future of what the Football Ferns might look like, post 2023 World Cup as well, which is pretty exciting in its own way, even though I'm not too confident as to how they're actually going to go against Olympic champion Canada. Or just, maybe let that one slide through to the keeper.
I'm going to hit that for 6. I reckon they're going to grab a win against Canada, and they're going to start or continue along the footballing, Kiwi sports revolution, because you're mentioning a young Football Fern squads, we've got young all-white squads, we've got young everything, we've got Otago Whalers winning games. It's a crazy time for a Kiwi sports fan. And it's also crazy because we've only got one Kiwi in the Women's Big Bash League over in Australia. We got 2 Kiwis. Rachel Priest is playing for Hobart. She is a retired White Fern, and usually there have been like at least 5 White Ferns playing in the Women's Big Bash League every summer, and it's been fantastic. But this summer, it's only Sophie Devine. All the others have returned to Aotearoa after their tour of England, which is fantastic for local cricket in Aotearoa. Shout out to the Halliburton Johnston Shield. But it leaves Sophie Devine as our major White Fern in the Women's Big Bash League. And she started with 19 runs at a strike rate of 158, opening the batting, and then hit 2 sixes in a super over to help Perth Scorchers win their game. And the major stat here is setting up some Sophie Devine intrigue in the Women's Big Bash League, because this is 2021. This year is the first year since 2009 in which Sophie Devine's ODI batting average and T20 international batting average has gone below 20. So for every year since 2009, she has been averaging over 20 in both ODI and T20 international cricket. This year, she is below 20 in both formats, and her T20 international batting strike rate has been decreasing. In 2017, 161 strike rate. In 2018, 144 strike rate. 2019, 131. 2020, 126. 2021, 94. So that is to say that Sophie Devine enters this Women's Big Bash League as the only White Fern, also in the worst batting year of her ODI and T20 international career since 2009, which is pretty fascinating. And I'm curious to see how Sophie Devine goes in the Women's Big Bash League based upon that. And also, we're looking forward to a home World Cup next year as well. So it'll be a big summer for Sophie Devine, and of course, all other women's cricket players in Aotearoa ahead of that World Cup. What do you got there deep in the Mangroves wildcard?
Deep in the Mangroves, just because I looked it up to remind myself, the 4 players from that 2018 I don't know what they call themselves, the junior Ferns or whatever, the team that came third at the under 17s World Cup a couple of years ago. The 4 players in that football soon squad are Annelite, where are we? Annelite, Amelia Abbott was one, Maggie Jenkins was another, and Gampy Reading. And I think Aniela Jensen might have been in the wider group, but not selected for that tournament itself. But let's go deep in the mangroves now. Yeah, where I behind my shoulder, for anyone watching the YouTube here, the couple fellas, the taller one, a couple fellas holding the Kiwi flag there at the NFL International Combine, whatever you call it. They seem to change the names a bit. International Player Pathway, I think it is, Combine. 44 guys met over the last week at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is sort of bookended by, there was a NFL international game there. I think the Jets played the Falcons last weekend, and then this morning the Jaguars beat someone. I forget who it was, but it was Trevor Lawrence's first win as a professional and snapped I think the second longest losing streak ever, something ridiculous like that. Jaguars have lost like 20 games in a row. But yeah, International Combine was happening in between, which is like 44 players drawn from all over the world. You can see some of the different flags there. There was guys, most of them were probably like about half of the group was from the UK and Germany, bunch of like random scattered European nations as well. A few guys from Nigeria, a couple from New Zealand. One of the guys from New Zealand is Lance Leota, who's the slightly shorter one there to the side there. And then the other fella is Shawn Tuione. So these two guys were battling with all these fellas to try and make a selection for the next NFL IPP intake, which will be about like 11, 12 players, something like that. And everyone who gets there will have 3 straight months of training with like proper NFL caliber coaches. And then the 4 best at the end of that get allocated to an NFL practice squad for next season. They will pick a division at random, and everyone just gets an extra player on their practice squad from the International Player Pathway program, whatever it is. Most famous instance of this is probably old mate Jordan Mailata, who was once an under-20s player for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and then now is on like a 4-year, $60+ million contract as a Philadelphia Eagles lineman. So that's what these guys are aiming for. They went through a bunch of combine tests, you know, the things you normally see before the NFL draft of like jumping up and smacking the sticks and seeing how high, you know, the broad jumps, the running around cones and the 40-yard sprints and all these things, like all these guys going through this. And I was trying to look at some of the media stuff to see how they went specifically. It's very hard to, I did find one clip because Leota plays for it's Germany. I did see like an NFL Europe sort of little promo where you can see a little like couple clips of him running around his things. He's a defensive end though, so it's not like he was blitzing around those like the wideout guys or the cornerbacks were doing. But still, Leota is a real interesting dude because I think he went to like junior college, so like a prep school in America to prepare him to go to a proper college. But he didn't end up going on a scholarship to play college football because his mother got sick. And so he came back to care for her, missed out on that opportunity, but has in the last year gone over to the first ever, I think it's like European Football League, I think it's called, a new incarnation of there's been a couple different versions of this. It's mostly German teams with a couple others, but he's playing for one of those now, and he's got an invite from there after making the All-Star team in that league. And Shawn Tuione is a dude who's been going to Brigham Young University, but not the one in Utah where Paul Lasike went actually, the last New Zealander to play NFL, but the Hawaiian branch. And he was the only guy on the list who doesn't have a current team. He's not actually playing for a gridiron team at the moment. I don't know how he ended up in this program, but he did. He's obviously got the abilities. So two fellas, Lance Leota, Shawn Tuione, they've each been showing what they can do to the scouts, and now it's just a waiting game to see what happens next, to see if either of them make the short list to go to America and train for the next 3 months, and then hopefully make the 4 on top of that. Exciting times for those, and exciting times to see that although, after we had the Jared Hayne thing, we had the Valentine Holmes thing, various others, like there's often every now and then there'll be a case where people say like, man, the talent at this part of the world, like in Australasia, is just so untapped. The NFL has got to get in. Well, the NFL like knows what they're doing. They've got good players, but Like they're not suddenly going to start scouting a whole bunch of All Blacks away from New Zealand or anything like that. That's a bit of a pipe dream. But having said that, it's clearly enough talent overflowing, and it's interesting to see that the NFL is really making an effort to find its global pathways.
I believe David Fusitu'a is making an effort to find some global pathways as well.
That he is.
He, all accounts, is going to be signed to Leeds Rhinos in the English Super League, or, European-ish Super League. And I think this is interesting because it marks like an end of a bit of an era for the Warriors. To paint that picture, let me tell you that round 1, 2020, the Warriors had Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at fullback, Patrick Herbert on the wing, Dave Fusitu'a at centre, Peta Hiku at centre, and Ken Mamalo on the wing. Round 1, 2020, and none of those players are with the Warriors anymore. They have all left the Warriors in less than 2 years. And this goes back to a period, we're looking like early Stephen Kearney era, 2018. Ken Mamalo was re-signed till the end of 2022. David Fusitu'a was re-signed to the end of 2023. And at that time, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was signed to the end of 2022. So those are all long-term deals. And the funny thing is, like, long-term deals, don't worry about those because you just get out of those ASAP. Like, Mamalo was released before the end of his contract. Fusitu'a was released before the end of his contract as well. And when you think about replacing Fusitu'a and Mamalo, you've gone Watene Zalesniak, you've gone Marcelo Montoya, both of whom are quicker. And I think that's just the vibe. Like, those players in Stephen Kearney, that era was very simple. It was grindy, even though they weren't very good at it. And having two big, powerful wingers, I think, was really important to Stephen Kearney and that version of the Warriors. Then suddenly, COVID hits. The Warriors were really bad in 2 games before COVID. Like, that needs to be known. Then COVID hits, and suddenly the rules have changed. The whole game, the whole footy has changed. And that's what I believe we are seeing with the Warriors, is a retooling of their roster, but it's also a period where a lot of contracts are coming to an end. Like, Adam Blair was signed till the end of 2020, I think. And like, there was that period of Stephen Kearney contracts where he signed a lot of players to come to the Warriors, and it was for 3 to 4 years. And we're basically, I think with Fusitu'a, we are at the end of that cycle of players who were signed for decent 2 to 3, 4-year deals under the Stephen Kearney regime. And now we are wiggling our way out of it. And I think the Warriors are going to be in a good position moving forward, just as far as salary cap goes, because under Peter O'Sullivan, you don't overpay wingers. There is a lot of depth in the wing position, outside back position at the Warriors. And the recipe here is that you just promote a winger to do a job. And then when they outgrow their contract, your production line means there's another one coming up on a cheaper deal. The Warriors previously forked out a decent money, like who knows with NRL salaries, but decent money to keep Mamalo and Fusitu'a on long-term deals alongside Tuivasa-Sheck. And not only do I think it was like, is that what's the word I'm looking for? It's not incorrect. It's just a different salary cap management method that I don't think worked out very well. And now you've got the change in style as well. So the Warriors, I've previously mentioned that they don't really have many young halves in their junior system. That's okay, because you want to pay money or find really good halves to do a job, but you want to have that outside back depth and junior production line, and you want to have that production line in the forwards. So you've got young players on cheaper deals to do a simple job in positions that are more basic than halves and hooker and fullback and stuff like that. And I believe David Fusitu'a's alleged departure symbolizes and represents a end of that cycle. And now we've got a very different salary cap strategy under Peter O'Sullivan. We've got a very different like talent identification system now. And I think it's kind of positive. I think it's positive. It's a bit bummer. Like the picture behind me, we're reflecting on a pretty interesting period where these three were fullback and wingers. You know, it was all looking good. And the other thing is like these dudes were all signed on long-term deals at the same time that Shawn Johnson was told he wasn't worth what he wanted. So you can see how the Warriors might have opted to invest their money elsewhere and not invest that money in Shawn Johnson. Now Shawn Johnson's coming back, and all the players the Warriors kind of invested in at that time have now left. So it is what it is. I don't know if it's positive or negative. It's just the end of an era, and we keep moving forward, onwards and upwards. Wildcard, I have a question. No, you've got a question. You ask your question first.
Yeah, I'll chuck mine out first because I'm just thinking, imagine explaining to a Warriors fan in like 2018 or whatever, or whenever that photo was taken, that like the play that come the start of next season, like Shawn Johnson will be there, but none of those guys will be. There'll be a different coach, and all. It's just, I mean, I think probably a lot of Warriors fans would have just been like, yeah, well, it doesn't actually surprise me. But even still, on light of what you're saying there with all of that, that fits in very nicely with what I actually wanted to ask you anyway, which is that because I saw the same thing for Fusitu'a going, and I've seen guys like Paul Turner was one who left mid-season. Hayes Perrin was another one. So a few like what's his name, Papali'i, having just a fantastic season with the Eels, the kind of like form that never really saw at the Warriors, and he did get opportunities. But even still, in light of that, I just wanted to know that. I just wanted to ask you how efficient you feel the Warriors junior pathways are operating. How efficiently you think they're operating right now with the Warriors junior pathways?
It's hard to put it in context because like we're dealing with a Warriors team that has like an under 20s dynasty. You know, the production line, the junior system has always been pretty good, but I don't know if it's been efficient as far as NRL production. So I don't want to compare it to previous eras. I would just say it's fantastic because you can only do what the Warriors, I interpret as what they want. You can only do that with a really good production line. And I kind of chucked all that stuff about the Warriors up as part of an ongoing narrative I have where it's a miracle the Warriors are still existing, like as a team, considering everything that's happened and all the transactions that have happened just this year. Like Reece Walsh didn't start the season with the Warriors, you know? None, like players came in and out mid-season, which is terrible for winning football games. So that is just some background context. The production line, though, has produced NRL players from Redcliffe, for example. Viliami Vailea went from Aorere College last year to Redcliffe to Warriors NRL in the space of 12 months. Taniela Otakulo played 3 NRL games without playing a reserve grade game. So something good is happening there where you've got a bloke in under 21s going straight up to NRL and doing a job. Rocco Berry's looked pretty good in the NRL. Edward Kosi is fine. They're going to have Junior Ratuva, a Fijian winger. He played for Redcliffe this year. Let alone the forwards like the Kepu twins. They were playing SG ball last year. Then they played under 21s for Redcliffe this year before playing reserve grade for Redcliffe this year. So if you're just chucking that like, oh, Australia's got better pathways, Australia's got better rugby league, got better development. Well, there's multiple Warriors juniors who went from SG ball to start last year to playing reserve grade Queensland footy this year. Some played NRL. So there is something good happening in that development production line. If you're developing players from an under 18 level to Australian reserve grade at a club like Redcliffe, which has their shit in order, as evidence in their NRL bid, I think the production line is good. I think the efficiency is good because they are producing players in positions where you want that production line. And I think that's where the benefits are. Not to mention, like, the Warriors have multiple players in First 15 rugby. The Warriors have a connection to Kelston Boys High School, who won the Auckland First 15 competition this year, with multiple Warriors juniors in their First 15 team. Like, the Warriors have a pretty good presence in Aotearoa, even though they exist in Australia. So you've got two countries producing talent for the Warriors. And I think it's pretty good at the moment. It's just different, it's a different cycle now. A lot of the local juniors from the last cycle have moved on. Some onto bigger and better things like Papali'i. Others, who knows what they're doing right now? Like they've just fallen off. So generally, I think it's pretty good, Wildcard. And I'm going to ask you, what's the best way to ask this? On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rank your desire for Stephen Fleming to be the all-format Black Caps coach?
Yeah, scale of 1 to 10. Interesting. I mean, the all format thing might be a slightly important note to address there as well, because in light of how well he has done over multiple seasons in the IPL, it might not be the worst thing in the world to have a 2020 specialist coach. I would put it as like I don't know, if the job was open, I think he would be the number one candidate that I would like, in which case it'd be talking like 9 or 10 or something. I think because Gary Stead, in fairness to Gary Stead, has done a pretty solid job. He is a nice time to take over the team for sure, but also, he hasn't ruffled any feathers. He's kept things nice and even, and he's been successful for the most part. We'll see how they go in some of the more like overseas, more difficult tours, but they just won a series in England and they beat India in the World Test Championship. So far, so good. I don't think you can have any complaints there about what Steady's doing. So in light of that, I'd say maybe, I don't know, a 4 or a 5 or something for Flem, just because it's not really a necessity right now. I think I don't know, a top tier 2020 wicketkeeper batsman, be that Tim Seifert, coming a major run of form, or someone else might be higher on my wish list.
So you want Brendan McCullum?
I want Brendan McCullum back, but only as a player.
Well, we're talking about coaches, it was like,
yeah, I wouldn't take him as a coach.
But say if
he's got a media career to address.
Say Gazza hit you up and he was like, "Yo, after the T20 World Cup, it's all over. What same ranking measurements? Where do you rank your desire for Stephen Fleming to take over? Like Stead's had enough. He just wants to, fuck off, do something else.
Yeah.
Of all the contenders in the world, what's your desire for Stephen Fleming to be the coach?
Yeah, well, if Gary Stead rang me up personally to tell me that he was gonna retire to the farm or something like that, and he chose me ahead of the TV newsers or the radio newsers or whatever, first of all, I'd be very honored from him, but also I would say then we suddenly push up to what I was saying before about if it was open, Flem would be probably the number one candidate, in which case, 9 or 10 or something like that, get him in there.
4th IPL title for Stephen Fleming with Chennai, and he has finished second 4 other times. So I think the IPL has been going for 14 or 15 years. Stephen Fleming played the first year, 2008. He finished second as a player, and then since 2009, he has coached to 4 title wins and 4 runner-ups, which is 8 second or better, which is pretty fucking good, if you're asking me. And that's why I'd be happy to have old Flem as a Black Caps coach. Musical jam here, Wildcard. Big it up to Maxo Cream. He's got a new album, Weight of the World, which I've just been listening to. Maxo Cream is a rapper from Houston, I think. Might be Dallas. Nah, he's Houston. And he is pretty gangster. And his music is different. It absolutely slaps and it slams and it bams and it goes hard as fuck in your car system. If you just want to turn it up loud, it's amazing. And then if you're listening to Maxo Cream, he's got like a cool style, which is really insightful. He's a pretty smart dude, but he's also, gang banging crip from Houston. So he's been in some shit, been in some situations, and the way he reflects on his life and his situations and who he is, what he's been through is really entertaining when packaged in a style which is incredibly pleasurable to listen to. He's got a track with Tyler, the Creator, on this album. There's a guest appearance from ASAP Rocky as well, and it's Freddie Gibbs as well. So he's kind of moving into that realm of just getting those more cooler features. Pick it up, Maxo Cream. What do you got for musical jam, Wildcard?
Musical jams. I'm definitely interested to have a listen to this Jason Isbell covers album that's popped up. Jason Isbell is, once of the Drive-By Truckers, and now solo fame, is, one of the premier sort of singer-songwriters of the current era. However, this is just a covers album of bands and songs that he loves from Georgia, just from the state of Georgia, because he's from there. And there was he made some random bet on it's funny because he's mates with Sturgill Simpson, and Sturgill Simpson did the same thing. Like, I can't remember what his was for. It was just he made a lockdown bet, Sturgill did, of like, if you guys do whatever or give enough money to this foundation or something, I'll make a bluegrass album of my old songs. And people did, and then he went and did that. This was like late last year, I think. Jason Isbell had a bet that if Georgia went, I think, Democrat in the last election or something like that, he would then make an album of cover songs from Georgia. And so it did, and he did that. And I am interested to hear what it sounds like. There's a nice eclectic range of artists that have come out of Georgia, and forever. He's one of them and many others, so that's going to be cool. And he's a deceptively good, he hasn't done a lot of covers, but a lot of his albums might have one or two or something like that. And there was an EP one time that he put out, like a live one of about 4 or 5, which were real good as well. So I'd like to see how that goes. But then also over the last weekend, what I've actually been listening to was just heaps of Velvet Underground, because there's a documentary that came out. Acclaimed film director Todd Haynes has made it. It was for like Apple or something like that. I can't remember, but it came out over the weekend. Just I think it's just called The Velvet Underground, just a documentary about the band's time, their struggles at the time, and the big acclaim that they've come into more recently. But he sort of steered away from, not more recently, but just ever since. But yeah, he sort of steered away with the movie from doing standard. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and then here's a bunch of famous people talking about how much they love the Velvet Underground. He steered away from the standard way of doing those kind of things and kept it a little bit more in keeping with their Andy Warhol connections, a little bit more what's the word, not surreal, but whatever the word is for lots of images and trying to capture a feeling rather than and lots of split screens and things like this, and rather trying to capture the vibe of the band rather than telling people what they were about and things like that. So it's quite a cool documentary. I enjoyed it, and then also left me just listening to not just the Velvets, but also Lou Reed's solo stuff afterwards and John Cale's solo stuff afterwards and that kind of thing. So that definitely kept me busy over the weekend.
Variety show completo. We will
That's
finish there, and stay tuned. Big yarns coming up in the niche cast later in the week. Plunkett Shield cricket's going down. everything is swinging back around. We're just in a little, as I said, obscure patch of Kiwi sport, and it's about to get a whole lot fucking weirder. So stay tuned. We'll be back. Mauri ora, kia kaha, stay beautiful. Chip.